Welcome back to another episode of Embracing Magic with me, Steph, and my co-hosts, Lizzie and Tony. Today's episode is going to be all about ancestral witchcraft. We're going to be diving into what that is. We're going to be looking at ancestral grimoires, rituals, communing with our ancestors, all sorts of things. So we're going to get started with what is ancestral witchcraft? And I feel like that question is most suited to Tony because Tony's been an ancestral witch for a very long time. So, what is ancestral witchcraft, Tony?
I would say, like any witchcraft, it's just the type of witchcraft that you're most aligned with. And for me, I feel incredibly sentimental about anything to do with my lineage. I spend nearly all of my time searching into my family tree, into the types of crafts that they used to do, the type of work that they did. I like to trace where my lineage has come from. I feel very connected to the land. And I think that really instructs my witchcraft as well. So a lot of my witchcraft is to do with connecting with my ancestors or working with spirit guides. And I think that's really the way that people work out what kind of witchcraft they're into. I think it's basically whatever gives you that glimmer. You know, it's the thing that you sit at home researching off of your own back all of the time and working on. So yeah, I just feel really, really passionate about that kind of work. I feel very excited about the idea that my blood and my DNA is made up of those that came before me. And what does that mean? And, you know, what kind of successes have they had and what kind of traumas have they had and how can I help honor their lives today? So that's kind of, I don't know if that's a very good explanation, but it's really what I'm most passionate about. So ancestral veneration is all about honoring your ancestors in your witchcraft. It actually doesn't even have to be in witchcraft. I mean, there's a lot of Catholics and, you know, Christians and stuff that are interested in venerating their ancestors. And we see it across lots of different cultures. Like in Mexico. I lost my train of thought.
I think, well, basically everything you just said encompasses an ancestral witchcraft practice, right? So let's talk about sort of getting started into ancestral witchcraft. What would be like the first point you think you get started?
Well, I think that to get started, it's really handy to have an ancestral grimoire. You know, it's just a journal that's dedicated to ancestral work. And, you know, I think from there, what you do is you start looking at mapping your family tree. So obviously that's quite good. You can look at your maternal and your paternal side and you start going back and putting the dates in, finding out about, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, cousins, and like mapping that all out. And I think it's really handy to use a program or a tool like Ancestry. I find that to be quite reliable. I've used a couple of others and I haven't found them to be very good. Like, I won't name any names, but I've done a DNA test through a different site and they lost my sample twice. And I waited well over a year to do both of those samples and I never got any information. So I'm really happy with Ancestry. I think it's really reliable. I think their DNA testing is really good. I found a lot of family in America and also they give you lots of hints and stuff like that. You have to be quite careful because some of the hints are not accurate. Which brings me to my next point that you can also work with a genealogist. I found one earlier this year that I found really good reviews with her and she was very well priced as well. And she just kind of went in and looked at my family tree, what I'd done, and just checked that all the records matched up. And she removed quite a few people that I'd got wrong through hints from Ancestry. I'd just been like, ooh, that's definitely that person. Taking all the hints and going, yeah, I'll add them in.
I know, I kind of started doing that as well. And then I realised that actually it was really wrong. Because if you looked at like the dates and it was like, oh, no, they were born like way later or way earlier.
And what was nice about Ancestry is I overlapped with a distant relative and she'd already done loads of the work and she'd put lots lots of details in, which was really interesting. So there were actually already photos, and there was quite anecdotal information for my mother's side of the family, which was really cool. And then obviously she did this genealogist that I worked with did such a good job for such a good price that I then passed her on to you.
Yes, which very recently traced back my Maltese side of the family, because my British sides had already been done by my dad and uncle, luckily. And they traced it back to, I think, the 1600s or something like that, maybe even earlier. But so found out that I had a lot of Welsh in my family, but the Maltese side, no one had ever done it, and I would really thought that it was going to be quite impossible, because where my family from is like a tiny little island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. It isn't even the main island of Malta. It's called Gozo. And I was like, there's no way she's going to be able to find anything. And then lo and behold, she traces it all the way back to the 1300s, find out my family got Italian roots, and that my 13 times great grandfather was Giovanni Pisani of Venice, which was like he was like a doge, which is duke. I think they were called dukes.
Your Majesty.
Then, thank you.
Your
you may bow down to me.
I love it.
But obviously, because it's so far back, there'd probably be hundreds of people, thousands, millions of people that are connected to him, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Maybe just you.
Or maybe just me.
Maybe
just me. No,
maybe
definitely not, because
that.
I've got way more cousins and things. So they were also connected. But yeah, so it was an incredible experience for me. Wow. And I know that I wouldn't have been able to do that myself without the help of a genealogist, because I wouldn't know where to look. And she was just so good.
Well, you have to really understand how records work, don't you? And you have to be really good at working out the dates. But perhaps then we could just talk about the areas in which our lineage comes from, because it's so connecting. So for me, I found out that on my dad's side, both his paternal and maternal side are Irish, which is interesting, from County Mayo. Which is quite cool because it's quite a barren area. It's coastal. There's not much going on. It's really beautiful. But people don't tend to like go on holiday there and stuff. So I started looking up pictures and I was like, wow, this is pretty untouched, beautiful land. And it's interesting because I've always felt really connected to Ireland as well. And when I went there, I bumped into an older man who gave me and my friends like an impromptu tour. We didn't even ask for it. He was just like, I'm giving you a tour. And we're like, okay. And at the end, he gave me this coin, which said, I think it said Hyperia on it, which means eternal winter. And it was named that because some explorer came over to Ireland and it basically rained for 100 days. And he just said it was the eternal winter island.
Wow.
And he gave me the coin and he said, don't ever spend that. It's because you're Irish that I'm giving this to you.
Wow.
And I was like,
amazing. I love
very
that.
Very interesting. But on my mum's side, I found out that we have some Welsh as well. Like you, I mean, it's pretty common that, if you're from the UK, you're going to have Celtic blood in you, right? So Monmouth as well. But I also found ancestry from Quebec. So we're French Canadian in my family as well. And then that the DNA test that we did obviously said Icelandic was the epicenter, which probably isn't that unusual either because of being descendant from Vikings, Vikings coming in and invading and, all of that stuff. But yeah, just super interesting. And then obviously you found out about Venice.
Yeah, so it was either going to trace back to an Arabic country or Italian. So it went back to Venice on my mum's side. And on my dad's side, I think I mentioned before, Welsh. There's Welsh in there. And so, yeah, that's me, really.
Do you know it where in Wales, though?
Yes, but I can't remember the exact location.
Because this for me is what's really exciting is knowing where and being able to visit and go and feel that connection to the land. Because I have this sort of theory that we are like ley lines. We're kind of drawn back to areas in the world where our lineage resided at some point.
Yes.
Go on, Lizzie, tell us.
This gets me really excited.
Go on.
Because, so I've been inspired by both of you to look into my ancestry because I think before I had thought about it, but not in such depth. So I thank you very much. You've passed the genealogist on to me.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
like a
Thank you very
cycle.
much.
Yeah, I should be getting some little commission off of all this.
So I went on Ancestry, started looking through, and as I think I've said before, and again, it's finding the places. So from the Isle of Tyree specifically, on my paternal side, on my dad's side, and it's MacDonald, so I'm technically MacDonald, and there's millions of us that it just traces back and back and back and back. But what's really interesting is we've drawn a blank because my grandmother was adopted, and they're suspecting that there's Maori line. There's a Maori line. So, and I've again, when you're talking about places of connection, when I go to New Zealand, I just feel this amazing connection, like I'm home. It's so sacred. It's so special. So then when I heard about this Maori line potentially that we've got, I was like, oh, wow. Well, that makes so much sense. I've been talking to my cousin in New Zealand, and she's been teaching me Maori phrases. And what I find just amazing is their connection to nature. And also ancestry is at the forefront of their entire practice and culture. It's all about the stories of ancestors of old.
It actually is in most Indigenous cultures.
Yeah.
It's just because I think society is so disconnected from that now. We live in a society that is so disconnected from death, ancestry. We're very much capitalist society. It's about now, it's about the future, it's about making as much money as you can and being a success.
Yeah.
And all of these people that are stepping away from that and looking into that ancestry pattern or lineage, it's so connecting, isn't it? It's just bringing you back to your roots and
really empowering. And it's it's those questions of why would you want to look into your ancestry? Because you want to know who you are, where you've come from, where you're going, what's made you at this point. And so that's been a massive awakening for me. And there's something as well about the Maori culture that does feel really quite witchy and connected to...
Definitely.
They have all these practices and rituals like the haka dance and all these elements that I've just been looking into, and it's just blown my mind. And I don't think, had I really started to think about my ancestors, I would have gone down as far as I've got to now. So now I'm hoping the genealogist will be able to look at my grandmother and see because it is a dead end at the moment. We don't have any... So
yeah, that will be tricky, but hopefully you can move past it.
Yeah.
I thought it would be worth just mentioning that we had a question about ancestry, and that was from someone in the coven that asked how to feel connected to your ancestors if you don't necessarily have that connection or if you don't know them. And actually, I just wanted to share a comment that some people venerate ancestors within their community. Yeah. So you can venerate the land as well. You can venerate the land in which you have been brought up on, or that your family has been brought up on, because that obviously holds secrets and information and magic too. But also you can venerate the members of the community, like the elders that have been influential, teachers in your life, or a neighbor or someone like that. And also, I think it's also important to mention that a lot of people don't feel connected to their ancestors. Like they've been brought up in a really traumatic household, or, they have very differing views. I don't think you necessarily have to like them.
No,
I think it's about understanding. And, I talked to my dad quite a bit about the fact that he doesn't have a very good relationship with his mum. And he just, for a long time, thought that she was really cruel. And actually, I said to him, you have to look at her context. She was brought up in a time when, people were forced together if the woman got pregnant. And that's exactly what happened, is they were forced to get married, her parents, because her mum was pregnant with her. And so they resented her whole life. And then she had a relationship with my granddad where he was basically having a relationship on the side the whole time. So she was the most neglected, unloved person in our family, which is deeply sad. And I said, people just aren't inherently evil or mean.
No.
You have to consider context. And I think that the piecing together of all of this stuff, all of this anecdotal information is what helps you heal family trauma.
Isn't it? Being able to forgive your ancestors and if there is trauma there.
Not even necessarily forgiveness. Sometimes it's honouring them. You and I have spoken quite recently about Archetypes. Maybe you want to show the book. Yeah, we've all, not that one.
This one?
Yes. we've all read this brilliant book, The Book of Ancestors by Claire Goodchild. And really in it, she describes sort of categorizing your family members by their archetypes. And one of the archetypes is those that have been shunned by society or have lost their lives too soon. And the importance of kind of like honoring them. I mean, particularly in the Victorian age and actually more recently, probably our grandparents and even our parents' age, lots and lots of stillbirths, lots and lots of miscarriages. And, you know, those are lives that were lost too soon. And again, my nana, who I was just explaining about, you know, she had a little sister that she adored. And as a baby, she went and she pushed her around the whole of the village, like introducing people to her. And the baby got too cold and died. Oh, no. So it's like deeply traumatic. But that's also a family member of mine, an archetype that was...
it's the same with my mum had 2 brothers that died when they were children.
Well, also, you know, even in our nuclear family, I don't know if that's what you call it, in your most immediate dynamic, I think of myself as being the 3rd child, like the 3rd daughter, but I'm actually the 4th, and my younger sister's actually the 6th. So it's you know, when you're looking at family constellation and stuff like that, it's really interesting to understand where you fall in that line and the lives that were lost in between.
Yeah.
You know, and even my grandma, she had a child that, I mean, I think she had like 4 miscarriages, or, you know, she had like a couple of babies that came to term and died sadly. But one of them lived to be like a few weeks old and then, you know, passed away. So I think it's a really important part of ancestral work to recognize these people that have lost their lives too soon, or people that like your family, the Pisani family. I think you said that they might have lost loads of money or something.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that the Pisanis were quite big gamblers.
Oh,
so I think there was something that they lost the villa, the Pisani villa.
Say what?
And had to sell it because of gambling.
Yeah.
So,
but I think even knowing that, because I think you said to me afterwards, I think that represents to you quite a big money block.
Yeah.
So even understanding that is really interesting, I think.
I was just going to say, it's lovely to talk about the because I think for anyone who's listening and thinking about ancestral witchcraft, it's really lovely to hear the different like archetypes. I think you immediately assume it's just blood relations, but actually you're talking about the community. And so what I was just thinking then when you were talking about that, and I don't think I've ever given it much thought, is a couple of things. My mum had a stillbirth, so I would be actually 3rd in line. And I had my own tragic miscarriage that I'm going to honour for Samhain. I'm going to honour her. I've never even thought about it or honoured that, because I suddenly realised when reading the book and talking to you and listening of all the different archetypes that you can honour. And I think it's really important that for a lot of people who are just entering in, that there are so many avenues for it, not just
well, also
blood relation.
As women in a modern society, so many of us have had terminations.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, I've had a termination. You know, my husband and I got pregnant really early on in our relationship, and it was just too soon. You know, 3 months, we weren't ready. But I never really honoured that life. And again, these are things that you can't find in your ancestry tree, you know, in your ancestor tree, sorry. So I think it's really important to note this stuff down anecdotally and, you know, try and find a way to like help that energy move on in a way.
Yeah.
You know.
So let's go back to creating an ancestral grimoire. Obviously, we've talked about creating the family tree. That would kind of be the first point in the ancestral grimoire. But what other things could you include in there? I suppose like family recipes is a good one.
Well, I just think any findings, anything that you find out. So I'd go tree, archetypes, you know, anecdotal information, anything that you find out is worth writing.
Letters from them.
Yeah, letters, photos.
Some people keep
trinkets.
marriage records if they find them. Photos.
Rituals, like any kind of little rituals that you do. I guess if you decide to honour someone in some way, like spirit bottles or something like that, is the process of building almost like a little it's almost like a little graveyard, isn't it? Like a little memorial. And you kind of use the spirit bottle and you put in things that remind you of that ancestor. It might be like a piece of their clothing or a piece of their hair.
Yeah.
It might be a color that they like, or just a bunch of little things. And then, when we had a spirit bottle workshop with a coven last Samhain, we wrote a letter to them. Yeah. And in mine, I wrote to my granddad just telling him about my husband, about how much he would have liked him, and that I was sad that they didn't meet. So I think spirit bottles are really nice rituals that you can do.
Yeah, definitely.
You've also, your spirit candle?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I guess that's something that I've kind of introduced last year, and now it's something that I do every year with the coven. We do a online workshop together, where we create a spirit candle for our ancestors. I think that's just such a nice way to connect with them, and then have that to use on Samhain to light for them, or you can use it on their death day or birthday, So I feel like that's become like quite an important ritual for me now. But also finding out about what your ancestors' beliefs and things they might have been interested in, I think is quite an important thing to incorporate into your practice. And so, interestingly, sometimes that might be something that you don't believe in now.
Yeah.
So how do you incorporate that into your practice, it being more aligned with you?
And give us an example.
Well, obviously, my family's Catholic. So, for example, I mean, so are yours.
Yeah.
I was actually reading in a book that Tony recommended to me, and she is Catholic, Honouring Your Ancestors, another really good book.
I recommended a Catholic book.
I know. Who are you? And she was talking about the rosary. And then I had a chat with Tony about it, and I was like, I feel really drawn to the rosary. And then Tony then recommended me another book. It's like an endless stem of books. And I've only read the first couple of pages, but even then I was like, oh wow, the rosary is actually connected to like mala beads, basically. And actually the symbol of the rosary is the mother goddess, right?
Yeah.
So
even Mary
the hoop
Magdalene,
and the cross,
she's
Magdalene,
like the ultimate female icon.
And it talks about other goddesses and so really interesting. I think part of ancestral witchcraft is actually honouring them, but kind of honouring their beliefs and practices that they may have done, but in your own way that works with you, and sometimes that's a process of kind of realising how to do that, I think. Especially, I don't really align with the Catholic religion per se. I don't want to start going to church, but there's aspects of the Catholic.
There's so much ritual. So much ritual in it.
So much ritual that I'm finding quite interesting to look at.
Yeah.
And some very nice architecture.
And some
my dad,
beautiful architecture.
My dad was deeply Catholic, and sometimes, we would cross paths with that. But I think when I think about it, I just think I meditate on it and honour it, if that makes sense. Like I sort of, when I'm meditating on it, I sort of honour that was his belief. And at one point he was training to be a priest, like amazing. But I just sort of honour that was his choice and it's not mine in this life, but I honour that was what he believed. So it's like I feel like in meditation, giving thanks to them.
Interestingly,
in that way.
Meditation is a really lovely way to connect with them. But I've actually also started incorporating prayer.
I literally knew you were going to say that, because I think I said in an earlier episode that I used to have such a difficult time with that word, because I do connected it so much with Christianity, and actually reclaiming it in this new spiritual practice. Well, it's not new for me, but in this separate spiritual practice has really sort of like repaired that word, like that damage around that word for me, and I love it. I love prayer. It's so beautiful. I find as much as I have issue with Christianity and Catholicism, when I go into a church, I feel duped because I go in there and they're like, ooh, incense and beautiful candles. And I'm like, I've been lured in by all these things that I like. And I love religious iconography as well. Oh, it's quite gothic, you know.
Yeah.
But also anything to do with Mary Magdalene, I think is stunning. But I go in and I feel so comforted when I'm in there. And I'm like, damn you, with your frankincense and your beautiful soft lighting and your organ music.
I went into the church in my family's village in Gozo, and it's so beautiful, absolutely stunning church. And you get this overwhelming feeling when you're in there, because it is so magical.
You're like, community, spirituality. I'm here for it.
But it's just a shame that it's the way it is. But
talking about sort of in a way like honoring people's practices and their thoughts and feelings. Before I came here, I spoke to some of the women in my family, and we've known for a while now that my great grandma Taylor, her name was actually Clara Box. She was a death witch, essentially. She used to speak with spirits, speak with the dead. And I've coaxed it out of my mum and my sisters now. But we all have it. We all have that gift of going into places and sensing energy, bad or good. And we had a really interesting conversation about how afraid we all used to be of my grandma and granddad's house. I think I've mentioned it before, 14th century thatched property in Dorset, really like small ceilings, but such an old house. And we were all terrified of the staircase. And I didn't like prompt any of them. I just asked them if there was anywhere that they felt in the house that they felt uncomfortable. And they all said separately that they were terrified of the staircase and they were terrified of my mum's room. And I spoke to my mum, and my mum said that she actually saw the outline of my of her uncle Fred, who died 4 months prior, sat on the end of her bed.
Wow.
But my granddad sort of like pulled open the fireplace. He pulled out the wall, I think, because there was some like water damage, and there was a boxed in fireplace there. And they'd found baby's bones on the fire.
Oh,
you know, but that sounds really scary. But actually, if you think about it, like going back to what we were talking about children in the Victorian era and like miscarriages and stuff like that.
Oh, there may, but yeah.
Very common thing to do, miscarriage, bones on the fire. But it's so sad because actually that's no way to honour a life, really, is it?
No.
So, and I feel like a lot of the disease and the issues that we have in our body are that lack of honouring that's happened in the past. It's like something tapping going, hey, there's unresolved energy here. There's an unresolved issue.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I come from a line of death witches.
Death witches.
Death witches.
4th generation death witch bitches.
So when we're talking about honouring, as you just mentioned, what are different ways that we can honour them in terms of like what offerings would you leave ancestors?
I wouldn't say that I'm super into offerings. So one of the most standard things you can do is to have photos of your ancestors in your house. You can have an ancestral altar, which we'll probably come back to, but you know, having their photos in your house just means that there's that daily presence of them in your life. I'm overly sentimental about objects that have belonged to my ancestors. You've both been to my house. It's fucking full of shit.
It's amazing.
It's full of shit.
It's so good.
But, you know, even, you know, like we've spoken about before, like mundane items, you know, I have like a Victorian rolling pin and I have like a vase and, you know, lots and lots of things that belong to them. But in terms of like honouring, I feel like honouring the land is really important. So, you know, ensuring that it's not covered in pesticides, ensuring that it's kind of like tended to and looked after, and
picking up litter.
Yeah. You know, like you can honour them by looking after their graves.
Yeah.
You know, there's a big there's a lot of popularity at the moment with cleaning graves, you know, cleaning moss off them.
Visiting them and telling stories and stuff. I read a few things of people visiting graves and sitting with them and reading them a book or talking to them in that way.
So it's funny that you say that. So Dad's birthday was in July, so I went to his grave and honoured, and I did the haka. And I'm sure anybody watching was like, what's happening?
Oh my God, I think people are going to start hanging around at that grave just to see what mental thing you do next.
But it was like I wanted to, like,
People are going to video you.
Saltburn
And be like,
first time.
there she is again.
Second time she's doing the
I was doing. I just thought I just had this moment because I do talk to the grave. I do talk to Dad when I'm there. But then I was like, I'm going to do the haka. And haka as well is they do it at funerals, and also, you know, it's a huge thing. So I felt like it was also like a huge tribute.
But how does it go? Like,
so it goes kamate kora.
So it's kind of close.
It's very good. It's very good. But they have all the amazing. I mean.
Jazz
far
hands.
more, yeah, they have jazz hands. They're far more powerful. But it was like I wanted to honour, you know, that aspect. And I always, if I, this is going to sound weird, but if I drink a bottle of wine, like a New Zealand wine, I'll leave the bottle by his grave as well.
I don't think that's weird. And I
Just
think
to,
that's
like,
probably
love it.
quite common in Irish culture.
I'm
as
sure,
well.
yeah, leaving a little tinny or
Leaving wine is
Pour one out for the homies. Homie.
leaving wine is quite a common offering, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really do food and drink offerings.
Also water.
nice.
They say to leave water, fresh water for your ancestors.
because they're thirsty.
Yeah, they're thirsty. But yeah, just I think I think I do give food and drink. That's one way that I honour. And like I've got I know we'll talk about this, but I have an ancestor altar to Dad specifically.
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go into that.
so I have this photo of Dad on my ancestor altar, and I have loads of trinkets on there. But I do put like his favourite food on there. So if I've made it, I'll like leave a little plate for him, or and again, like I'll leave wine or I'll leave things, because I think for me a big part of like my family, we like our food and he was a real foodie, so it just feels right to honor him in that way and leave food and wine and things like that.
I think everyone likes food.
Everyone likes food.
Food is great.
It's the best.
It's the best. But so yeah, so I like to actually leave physical.
I think I'm more of a prayer person, really.
Right.
Like rather than leaving things, or just because I've had such bad experiences with like fruit flies. I've had a fruit fly infestation after leaving an offering before.
Incense is a really good offering as well.
Yeah, I mean, smoke. I love using smoke cleansing. I don't really like using that word anymore. Cleansing. You know, I'd only really smoke cleanse myself.
Yeah.
Stagnant energy out. Got some bad juju going on, you know. But I don't like cleansing other spaces. But
I was reading that the incense actually attracts the spirits.
I guess it depends on what incense you use.
I guess so,
right?
yeah.
Because I mean, you know, we're about to have a ancestral retreat, and we're making loose incense in one of the workshops, and that's going to be about spiritual communication.
Yeah.
So that literally is about encouraging communication. Which is quite interesting, because I think with ancestral altars, you are actually inviting communication in.
Yes.
So some people say that you shouldn't have an ancestral altar in your bedroom because they can keep you up at night.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you, mine is in my bedroom. And it would
She's awake a lot.
It would explain why I don't get much sleep and a lot of activity. But
And
yeah.
they say as well, don't they, if you are working at your ancestral altar, that you do actually invite them in. You either in your mind or you say out loud, and then you close it at the end, so that you again, you're not awake all night.
I think that's with any kind of communing with spirits.
Yeah.
You should invite and close
Your boundaries.
Because that's
So for people at home that don't know what an altar is, how do you explain an altar?
It's a sacred space that you create for yourself for spiritual connection, you know, your witchcraft, or not even strictly witchcraft. I think any kind of spiritual practice in which you would like to have some sacred space for peace, you know, for even yoga, you know, if you want to do some yoga or meditation, you might like to do it in front of a space that has like a candle, some soft lighting, some music. But visual inspiration's also really, visual stimulus is really handy. So some people use crystals as well for like grounding. Okay.
And so in this case, with an ancestral altar, I suppose items that you would have on your altar. I mean, for my personal altar that honours my ancestors, I have obviously photographs of all of them. I actually have little jars where I've collected the water, the seawater from the land, sand from the land. When I visited Malta this year, I went to the actual old house where my great-grandparents lived and where my nan grew up. And currently it's going under renovation. So the flooring, which I'm obsessed with the old Maltese floors, they're stunning.
Well, they're because they're like the beautiful like tiles, aren't they?
Yeah, they're like really unique. Ornate, that's the word I was looking for. Tiles. And I luckily found a piece of the tile to take away. So I have that on my altar as well.
Beautiful.
Along with shells and rocks from the land. I found a few hagstones whilst I was there.
You this was like a transformative like trip for you, wasn't it? Because I mean, you've been so lunar focused in your witchcraft for a long time, and this trip was so connecting for you, because I mean, it was a real privilege for me, because you were honestly just voice noting me constantly, and I was like peak ill at the time. You know, for people at home, the reason we've had a couple of guests, which is we'd always planned to have guests, but like I've got Lyme disease that I'm trying to recover from at the moment, and so I was kind of like really sick at home, not able to do anything, and you were messaging me all the time being like, I found this tile and I've been to this beach and here is my grandparents' grave. And it was just such an honor to like go along. It felt like I was there, you know, to go along for the journey with you. But you came back with all of these things,
goodies.
I remember you even preparing as well. Like maybe you should explain the mini altar that you took with you.
Yeah, gosh, I didn't even think about that. So obviously, you know, we just talked about that you can have a main altar at home, but you can also have a travel altar. So I prepared an altar to take with me, where I had a mini journal, tiny little candle, which I brought my love candle with me.
I mean, we even spoke about that because
because I was like, I don't know whether to bring the protection candle and the love, and you were like, well, I feel like this trip is all about like love for you, like finding that sort of family love and connection. So
I'm a sentimental bitch. So
I brought that with me. I had some incense, some little incense cones. I also brought a playing card deck as well, because I found out that it was likely that the Maltese would have practiced with playing cards rather than...
It was like a divination thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. I had a pendulum with me. Gosh, what else did I have? Obviously, the jars.
You were using the pendulum a lot to ask questions, though, and I'm pretty sure you had some pretty profound answers.
Yeah, and do you know what? I went through a bit where I was just like, am I just like receiving messages that I want to hear? You know, you kind of question yourself a little bit, but it kind of came to be that there was something in my family line. There was secrets there, like witchcraft secrets, basically, and which would make sense that it would be secret because of how Catholic the country is. And witchcraft obviously is very much a no. So if anyone did practice witchcraft in the family line, it would have been secretly at home, quietly, kind of thing.
Maybe like that's the house feels so special to you.
Yeah,
there's a mysticism, because you told me about the chair thing.
The chair.
About having the chair outside, or like the chair at the table for the devil or something like that.
No, yeah. Well, that was another story. So even, you know, there were stories in our village of that a family down the road used to leave a chair out for the devil, and it's just like
sick.
I was like, it was actually Tony. So yeah, I packed this travel altar with me. I'm sure there was more things in there that I can't remember. Oh yeah, crystals. Took some crystals with me as well.
What crystals did you take?
I think I had amethyst for protecting whilst traveling,
and spiritual connection.
I had smoky quartz, which I actually left as an offering to the house before I left.
Oh, I love that.
And I think I had a few more, but I can't remember. But yeah, the whole trip absolutely has transformed my practice. I mean, when I was there, I was waking up and watching the sunrise every day at the local beach, which my family would have for generations gone down to. And then always on the way back up, where my nan's buried literally on the way back up from the beach, I would go and visit the ancestral grave. And it's not like the graves that we would have here where it's, mud. It's more like a tomb kind of situation. Yeah. So
like a mausoleum.
Yeah.
like
It's all above ground.
everything's above ground. Exactly. And
Apart
everyone,
from the bodies.
yeah.
The bodies are upgraded.
Shame. Sorry.
So
weird.
morbid, Tony. So,
Sorry.
and all the families would be buried in the same place. So you'd have one tomb or mausoleum, whatever you want to call it, where everyone would be buried. So all of their name plaques are on.
That's the thing that I
tomb.
loved about the
Amazing.
pictures you were sending me, is that there were photos on the graves.
Yeah.
Which is not that common over here. And then you just see like this row of photos, I guess in order of, people being added.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's nice that they're all in one place as well.
Yeah, lazy.
Although I've recently found out where potentially my great grandparents would be buried, which is in another village next to the village. So next trip I'll be going there.
Nice.
Trying to find them. But it completely transformed everything really. And I was getting so many messages as well. Like I found like a beautiful tiny little feather, which is definitely a little message.
Little air spirit.
Yeah. And even going into the house, I like went into the house and I put my hand on the walls and closed my eyes and kind of connected with that energy in the house.
We're becoming the same weird woo-woo lady.
Just mental. I think my cousin was like, okay. But my cousin's planted rosemary in the garden. And so I collected some of the rosemary, and I also found out that in Malta our traditional cleansing methods is olive tree leaves. So I made my own bundle with the rosemary from the house and some olive tree leaves that I collected. So yeah.
So what does this mean? What does this mean for your witchcraft?
Well, I suppose I'm leaning more into ancestral witchcraft now. I suppose you've turned me.
No, this was all you. I just got to enjoy the ride, really.
But no, yeah, like it really has meant a lot to me actually, and it's funny actually that I feel more drawn to that side of the family line. I do have a little bit of a draw to the paternal side, but a lot of it is the maternal side of my tree, which, some people at home might feel more connected to one side of their family tree than the other.
Yeah, I don't feel that way.
No, yours is very all of it. Give me all of them.
And there's a lot of damage on my dad's side, like emotional damage, and I still feel, it's interesting. But I do, when I look at you, for me, you're just a Mediterranean woman,
You Mediterranean bitch.
No, but I mean, like you're so connected with the land there that I just...
Yeah, I mean, I can't even explain to you what it feels like. And I'm sure, people at home may feel like this with, some land that they're connected to. Even here in the UK, maybe there's a particular part of the UK that you're most drawn to and you want to be, But every time I land, I'm just like,
I'm home.
And sometimes you might feel that about a place that your lineage hasn't been. I mean, because every time I go to Greece, I feel like I've come home.
Yeah.
I just went to Mykonos, and I think it's the 4th time I've been to like a Greek island, and I've never been to the mainland actually. But I land and I'm like, I just feel like I've returned.
Is that just the holiday feeling?
Possibly.
I'm on holiday, great.
Possibly. No, I think there's something really special about the land. There's a magic in it, and I just have all. I mean, I felt destined to live there when I was younger. I thought I'm gonna move here. I'm gonna be a water ski instructor. That's what I used to be in when I was younger. I used to win competitions for water skiing.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, weird.
Do you still have your medals?
Incredible.
No. No, the hoarder doesn't keep anything like that. But I felt, and I started to learn the language and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you can feel connected to. And also, I visited Arizona once, and if you've ever been to the desert out in America, there is magic. Like the land comes alive at night. It's so like barren and dusty, and it's so dehydrated. And then at night, everything comes out and it's moving, and all the creatures, and it's everything's clear in the sky. You can totally feel connected to land that's not anything to do with your lineage.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I really want to go to Tyree desperately. Like I was going to go this year and I haven't, and one thing and another. But because for exactly that reason of going and feeling and being, and I read about Tyree a lot, that there's this singing stone that everybody goes to.
Mate, we're going to go to all of these places.
We're
together.
all going, but I
Okay.
just want to, that same feeling of connecting and being and visiting all the places. on
Hopefully
Tyree.
we can take the Embracing Magic crew along with us.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
That would be so exciting. It'd be such a lovely piece of ancestral work to do as well, to go on those trips and visit those areas that our ancestors lived and learn about the type of life that they had.
Have you, when you've been connecting with your ancestors, have you received any messages or? From them?
I think that's a really interesting subject actually, because I think people receive messages in different ways. I think sometimes it's a feeling. Sometimes people literally feel like they're being spoken to. Sometimes you see symbols, or like you said, the feather or whatever. I literally hear whispering sometimes.
Yeah, same.
You and I have spoken about this, and it's when you're in that state of nearly asleep, not quite asleep, and it's like someone's talking in your ear. And sometimes it's a bit too loud, and you're kind of like wake up, and I've heard someone shouting before.
Sometimes I feel like the messages come muddled up because I feel like I had a message, and now I've made sense of it after another experience that I've had. So yeah, sometimes I feel like they don't come in quite the right order, so it can be confusing. But a lot of the time I receive messages from my ancestors via my dreams. And that's been happening quite a bit recently. I had 2 dreams in a row, basically, one night after the other. One was I think it's actually, I always grew up calling him my great uncle, but I think it's grand uncle because he was my nan's brother.
I didn't even know grand uncle was a thing.
Yeah, I think I read it in one of those ancestral books.
Education.
But yeah, so I had a visit from my grand uncle, and then the night after, my nan. And in that dream, it was a lucid dream because I can completely control
What was going on.
And I remember my view was on my mum talking to my uncle. And then I was like, if I just, because it was in my nan's house, and I thought in my head, if I just swing round, I'll be able to see my nan. So I swung round in the dream, and there she was, sat in her chair, which she always used to sit in.
Wow.
And yeah, I had this moment with her where I was telling her how much I missed her, and I had my hand on her face and my other hand on her hands.
Oh wow!
And it felt so real. It felt like I was there with her. And I woke up and I was like, I think it was because Willow, my sausage dog, jumped down off of the bed and woke me up, and I was like, Willow, having a really good dream. But yeah, so dreams can be quite a big one. And I think because I've been doing so much ancestral work, I feel like they're responding.
Well, also you had one before that, didn't you? With your uncle.
Yeah, I said my grand uncle.
Oh, your grand uncle, yeah.
Or great uncle.
But the fact that you got visited like twice in a week, essentially.
Mental.
I feel like you've been doing all this work, and they're responding to you.
Yeah. And then because after I had the dream from my uncle, I said a little prayer to them at my altar, thanking him for visiting. And then that night I had the dream with my nan in it.
Wow.
And I think what I did that day was I lit the spirit candle that I had made for her last year as a kind of way of saying thank you, and I had her ring on that my mum gave me. But yeah, incredible.
Amazing.
Oh, I love that.
I think I get I don't get the dreams, but I feel a presence. So I get this feeling of, oh wow,
there he is again.
Hi again. But last Samhain I honoured my great grandmother who has an amazing story. My great grandmother and my great grandfather met at the Oaklands Park Hotel when it was a hospital for New Zealand soldiers. So this land, you're talking about community ancestry, feels really special because they met just down the road and none of us knew about it. But anyway, I honoured her last year, and she started the Red Cross in New Zealand. She's quite an amazing woman. So I have her medals. So I did this ritual for her. And similar, I had a picture of her, and I had her medals. And then there was this beautiful letter she'd written my dad saying like how proud she was of him. So his grandmother, essentially. And then for 2 days, she was definitely with her. I could just feel her in different parts of the house.
Wow.
So just this presence, this huge presence. So mine is a feeling. I was trying to think if that's Claire. I don't know. Like I just have this feeling that someone's there.
Yeah.
And then I know
like
when
a
they
sensing.
go. A sensing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what my sisters were saying as well.
They have a feeling.
Yeah. Because we know all of us, all of my sisters, my mum, and I'm guessing my great grandma Taylor as well. You know, when we go into a house, we can tell straight away whether it's bad or good energy.
Yeah.
And like I said to you before, like I went into those catacombs, the really small ones, and just immediately had to exit because I was just like the air in here is suffocating and it's not good. It's not a good feeling. So that sensing is, I think, an easier type of way to communicate.
Yeah.
Whereas I think actually hearing messages is probably not as common. And I think receiving symbols and, you know, omens, not omens. What's the opposite of an omen?
Mind blank.
On a postcard.
You know, a good. Are there good omens and bad omens?
Yeah,
I guess
good
maybe
omen.
a good omen.
Good omen.
You know, like the feather and stuff like that. I think that that's more common. So I think for anyone that feels like they're not getting messages, don't be discouraged. You do have to really like lean into it and trust the kind of synchronicity of those messages coming to you.
And also, I feel just at the beginning of it, but listening to both of you, it's real deep work. It's an
inner knowing,
and it's allowing yourself. It's really allowing yourself to trust and go there as well when you're talking about it, like really like going into the house and feeling the wall and everything. So just listening to that, it is that thing of. I've had a couple of sensing moments, but it still feels quite new to me. Like I'm still exploring, which is really lovely.
Whereas I think we're like in full bloody conversations over here. You know,
I love it.
Be quiet, I'm trying to sleep.
Yeah, I'm trying to go to sleep now.
For me, it's really difficult because I have such issues with sleep anyway, that when I'm constantly I'm trying to fall asleep and I've got this like just all the time. And so I'll like fall awake and there's like loud shouting in my ear sometimes. So I think it can be quite difficult. You do have to really try and learn how to say
boundary it.
I think you have to communicate in a way that's very clear and say, I'm not open to communication tonight. Please allow me to sleep.
Even what Leonie was saying in the guest episode, and I think I read it in one of those books, writing a contract and being like, this is when you shall visit me from the times of but yeah, that's a good way, I think, of being boundaried, is writing it down and having that contract. You probably could keep it on your altar space as well.
I've just never really been a very contractual person. This is why I have very disturbed sleep. But I think also just, you know, if that feels too much to you, just say it out loud.
Just speak.
Or, you know, like if you're feeling afraid, you can say to them, I'm feeling scared right now, so I'm not open to communication. I'd like to sleep tonight. Or, you know, I'm not feeling ready to have a conversation with you right now. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or something like that, as long as you're being clear in your communication.
It's really interesting as well. I was just thinking then, I think we talked about it earlier, but I just thinking when you're saying that, if you're in a ritual opening to an ancestor and another ancestor comes in that maybe you don't want to talk to, that's also probably where you'll say, hang on, I'm not going to welcome your energy. I'm actually talking with this. Like I'm sure there are going to be moments of crossover with ancestors that you don't want to engage with as well, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, also, I think if you're opening communication with spirits in general, there's a very, very big possibility that you might hear from something that is not related to you. Or
there is ways, obviously, that you can protect yourself from spirits that, you know, you don't want to talk to, like Tony.
Look at this big hunk of tourmaline. Protection.
But yeah, so ways that you could protect yourself. I was actually reading about witch balls, and you can make a witch ball with nails and pins and string, and actually it's only to repel the more malevolent spirits. It's like a kind of catcher, I suppose.
You can do it with an egg as well.
Yeah.
And I think half a lemon as well, with salt. You basically like leave the lemon out and it absorbs all of the negativity. And you can actually physically see, because a lot of the time if you leave a lemon out, it will just dry up. But it dries up, if it goes really moldy and crusty and stuff like that, it's supposed to have absorbed all the bad
gunk
energy. Yeah.
Another good way is if you happen to have jewelry from your ancestors, you could make a protective amulet using jewelry that you've been left from your ancestors. I've got obviously I've got the ring from my grandma, but I also have the her name was Paula, so it's a letter P, and it's quite but it's very Maltese to have this like kind of like filigree looking P, the initial of your name. I've got an S, obviously. So I've got that, and that was the one that she used to wear every day. So that felt quite special. Yeah. That was actually the only thing that I asked for when she passed away. Wow. Good old 16-year-old me thought of that.
Oh, nice.
Because my mum was like, is there anything that you want? Because obviously my family's quite big. And I was like, I want the P.
I actually have like a gold, I think it's kind of like a Catholic necklace. It might be like a St. Christopher or something, but my grandma wore it for 40 years every day.
Wow.
So I asked for that.
Did she clean it?
I don't think she did.
No.
But I also have like an ancient rosary as well, like talking about rosaries.
Wow.
I should show you because it's stunning. Because I think it's either like really old pearls or it's really beautiful.
That's
it's
my
kind of spooky
birthstone.
looking, but it's kind of my style. So cool. I've thought about wearing it, and I'm just like,
shall I?
I'm not sure I can get away with this. It's a bit too religious for me.
But yeah, so protective amulets, but obviously you don't need something from your ancestors. You can use crystals, like obviously we said black tourmaline. But yeah, what else protective wise?
Well, I know that we had a workshop with Mickey from Liminal Witchcraft,
yes.
and she said about black candles.
Oh yeah.
I actually have a black candle on my ancestral altar, although a lot of people say to use white.
Yeah, I mean, for me, white is a more spirit connecting colour. I don't tend to, I mean, I've actually brought a black candle for our retreat this weekend. But for me, I think for me, like just having a photo, being grounded, having my tourmaline, being really clear in my communication, who I'm inviting in, and when I'm opening conversation and when I'm closing it. I'll be honest, I'm not someone that's like very afraid of malevolent spirits.
I think you can ask for protection from your ancestors as well.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that most people are naturally attracting them. I think that it's, it tends to be people that are kind of like in a more vulnerable state. And in which case I would say don't open communication if you're feeling emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's just not a good time. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's true. I just thought of another way, I don't know if we mentioned this before, of kind of honouring them and something to have in your altar is to collect the graveyard dirt.
Yeah.
I don't know if we said that.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you'd be very into.
It's probably under your fingernails.
You've got it already.
I've done it already.
She's gone back.
Of course you do.
Because I've made, I guess it's called, what did you call it earlier?
Spirit bottle.
Spirit bottle, thank you. So I have Dad's hair. So when he died, I asked for his hair. But I did go to his grave and I have
Nice.
his grave. Yeah,
I've got great grave soil as well.
yeah. Because it feels
Powerful.
powerful, part of them, their essence.
And I kind of feel like the longer they're in there, the more powerful the soil will be. So
Absolutely.
go back and get some more in a few years' time.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, another way is obviously to have a dumb supper, but we're not going to go into that, are we?
No, we said we weren't even going to talk about it, Stephanie.
Don't mention dumb supper, don't mention dumb supper.
Sorry. Okay. Yes.
Mind blank.
My blank. We've been talking for a long time about this, but there's so much to talk about.
It's been really exciting for me that you've got into doing ancestral work, because it's something that I'm overly sentimental about and absolutely adore. And it's just been nice to like share that with someone as well and see how excited you've got with it. And it's made me dip back into my family tree and look at stuff that I missed the first time round. So it's kind of like brought that all back up for me. And yeah, it's just been
all
lovely.
the glimmers coming out again. Yeah, I mean, it's been a really profound experience for me, getting into ancestral witchcraft, and it's now becoming a huge part of my practice. And yeah, I mean, I can't wait to continue diving deeper. But what I will say is that it can be really heavy work. So for those at home that's thinking about getting into it, just bear that in mind and just make sure that you're ready to start the journey with it, really.
And it's a perfect time of year as well.
Yes.
You know, we're moving into Samhain, which is all about venerating ancestors. So this episode will be going out exactly at the time that you can start practicing this work if you want to.
Because I was going to say that it feels, for me, literally as a beginner to ancestral work, that now is the perfect time to step in and do it. And also, like, I'm going to honour, as I said earlier, someone that I've lost. It just feels like it is deep work. So I am sort of preparing myself mentally for it as well. And I don't think I'd been ready before, actually, when you were saying you've got to be ready for it. I don't think I had been ready until now. So I, again, just saying to everybody at home, I think really listen to when you're ready to start this work. I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really enjoyed doing this episode. But if you did want to get started at home, we encourage you to use the genealogist we've used. We're going to post her link below. She is amazing. And yeah, get started with an ancestral grimoire and see what you can find out about your ancestors. It's an incredible journey. And if you have already started working with your ancestors, please do comment below. Let us know your different rituals and practices for ancestral witchcraft. We'd love to hear from you. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Embracing Magic.